The next functionality we want to look at here is followers and following. So when you are on someone else's profile, so if you click their profile, we want to show a follow button or unfollow if you already followed them. And then after that, we want to take a look at customizing the feed. So instead of just all tweets from everybody, if you're following people, we want the feed to be personalized to the people that you follow. So the first thing we're going to do is generate a model to reflect this. So we're going to say bin rails g model, and we're going to call it a follow. And it's going to have a following, which will be a references to the user table, and a follower, which will also be references to the user table. So go ahead and generate that and open up the migration. And then what we need to take a look at is the foreign key example from our previous migration. So if we go in here and make that two table users for both. So following ID and follower ID are going to both connect up to the users table, and we can go ahead and run that migration. And then we can open up the model. So we'll open up follow, and we can see it belongs to following class name user, and belongs to follower, also class name user. Then we want to open up our user model. So we can go to our follow here actually and open up our spec, and we can copy across. If we go to user, you can see we've got these tests for the relations. So we can come in here and say it's expected to belong to follower and belong to following. And then if we run the specs for this, it should pass, and it does. Then we want to go to our user spec, and we want to add a spec for it's expected to have many followers. And we'll also call the inverse of that then following. And then if we run these user specs, we should get 2 failures, and we do. So we can come to our user model, and first of all, we need to say has many following follows, and that's going to be class name of follow with a dependent destroy and a foreign key, and the foreign key is going to link to the following ID. So this is for people that follow you. So your user ID is going to be in the following ID column. We can do the inverse of this. So has many follower follows, and the following key is then follower ID. And these associations you don't really need to pay too much attention to. They just connect our user model to the follow model. Then we want to come down here and create an association for following, which is the association we'll actually use. And so that's going to be a class name of user, and then it's going to be through association. So it's going to be through the following follows, and then we're going to do the same for followers, which is class name of follow goes through the follower follows and has the follower ID foreign key. So if we hit save on this and rerun these specs, you can see they'll pass now. And we just want to do a bit of a sanity check here. So we want to go Rails console. We'll pull up U1 as user.first, and that is Pete, and we'll pull u2 as user.last, and u2.username is Sash. So we'll do u1, we'll actually just do follow.create, and we'll say following ID, and we'll say u2.id, and follower ID u1.id, and hit save. So that's created a follow. So now if we say u1.followers, that should be an empty association, but somehow we follow ourselves. If we do u1.following, we get an empty object. So there's something up here has many following. So if we go to our follow model, we have following and we have follower. So I think maybe we can just get rid of the foreign keys on this and hit save. And so we have many followers through follows. Let's reload. And then let's load up u1 and u2 again. And then let's do u1.following, still blank, u1.followers, and follow. So let's load up follow and say following. Yep, and follower. So the follow is set up correctly, but these classes for some reason are not. So I think when we're trying to grab your following, as in people that follow you, I think maybe we want to switch these around. Let's try that and load up u1 and u2 again. And u1.following, that's correct, u1.followers, and there are no followers. So then if u2 were to go and follow me back, let's say, we could do follow.create following u1, follower u2, and then if we do u1.reload, u1.following, we get the same answer, and follower followers as well loads up. So this all seems to be working now, and that is the database structure. It's a little bit confusing the way you have to wire these two up to the follow model, but we can kind of ignore those for the most part and just focus on these two methods here now that they're configured in the right order. So the next stage to this then is to generate a controller. So we're going to run railsg controller, and we're going to call it follow controller. And when we open this up, we're going to have two methods. So we're going to have create and destroy. Create will create a follow, destroy will destroy one. And then if we go to our routes then, we can set up resources, follows, and only create and destroy. And then we also need to specify the controller name. So I think it will try to use a plural name for this. So we'll want to put in controller, and we'll just call it follow. So if we hit save, run our routes, grep for follow, and we have follows path, which will create a follow, and follow delete path, which will delete a follow. I think actually it might be better in this case, instead of passing an ID for the follow, if we use resource, which will create a singular controller for a resource. So we have follows path delete, follows path post, and then what we'll do here is nest it underneath the profile path. So if we bring this down and then rerun that, you'll see we have profile follows path. So we're putting in the profile username and then posting to /follows to follow that person, or deleting to that path to unfollow them. Then if we go into our tests, what we'll want to do is describe post, and we'll say profiles username follows, and then we'll say it follows the profile, and we can say it does nothing if the profile is already followed. And then we can take a copy of this for delete, and we'll say it unfollows the profile, and it does nothing if the profile is not followed. So we can start this out by having a user. So we'll say let user and users Pete. And if we just check that in our fixtures, we've got Pete and then we've got Lazaro. So we'll say then let other user be users Lazaro. And then we can come down here and say post, and we'll say profile follows path with what was the profile username of other user.username, and then we can say expect response to have HTTP status of, actually we're probably going to want to redirect to profile path. And with profile username again of the other username. And then we want to expect that a follow is created. So we'll say to change follow count by 1. And we can also then go in and grab that follow. So we can say follow.last, and we can say expect follow.following to equal other user, and follow.follower to equal user. And that should test pretty much everything. So if we run this, it should fail. And it does. We get no root matches action update, controller profiles. So is it just profile username? Is it just username? So that's on line 11. I think it might just be username. So if we rerun this, we expected a redirect, but was a redirect to the sign-in page. So the other thing we need to do then is before action, sign in user, rerun. And we got 204 no content, so that's good. We can then go to our follow controller and we can redirect to, and we want to do a before action here. Set the profile. We want to say at profile equals profile dot find by. And just take a look in our profiles controller. Set profile params profile username. and then we can redirect to profile path with a username of @profile.username and rerun those tests. And so now we're getting the fact that it's not actually following the user. So what we then want to do is let's create a follow. So we'll say follow.create and we'll say following, and following is profile, follower is current.user. And if we rerun this test, it should pass now, and it does. So now when we come to our next spec, what we can do is copy over everything, but what we want to do is expect it not to change follow count. And we can remove that expectation as well. And then in here, what we want to do is follow.create following for the other user, follower for the main user. And if we run this, it should fail. And yes, it changed the follow count from 1 to 2. So that's happening because, first of all, we don't have any unique keys on these. So I think what we want to do here as well in this database table is also add an index. So we want to add an index on follows. The index is going to be following ID and follower ID, and that's going to be unique true. So the database will literally blow up if we try to do that, which just keeps data integrity good. So we can roll back that migration. And we're going to need to comment this out first. So we'll roll back, and we'll roll back the test environment too. Then what we can do is uncomment this so it gets created, and we can just replace rollback for migrate. And now if we go to our follow spec and run this spec, it should fail with a different reason. It should fail because a unique constraint is being broken. So we get constraint exception, which is good. So the database literally won't let us perform that action. So then we just need to add a check in here. So what we can do instead is create a method on the profile. So if we go to our user model, and we'll create a method called follow. So we'll say follow, and we'll say follower. And then in here, we can copy this across. So let's go to here, cut this. We'll say profile dot follow, and we'll say follower is current dot user. Hit save, and then let's go back to our user model, paste this in, and the first thing we want to do is following is self, follower is follower, but we first just want to check if we have that person already. So we can say if they're already following this profile. So we can come in here and we can put this code in to basically check if you already have a follower with that ID. We want to skip this creation. So hit save, go back to our follower spec, run this test, and it should now pass, and it does. And if we run both just to make sure, both of those are now passing. So we can then move on to our delete, and we can say it unfollows the profile. So we want to take a similar approach to this first one, and we want to change the follower count by -1. We're not going to look up the follow, and we're just going to assert that it redirects. So we'll say delete here, and we also need to create that follow first. So we'll just paste that in, and then run that. And so we get 204 no content again. So if we go back to our follow controller, and we'll do the same thing here, where we'll say profile.unfollow and put the follower in and put the redirect in as well. And so if we run this, we should get undefined method unfollow, which we do. Go back to the user. Let's copy this, create the unfollow method, and we want to check if the follower exists. Then what we can do is delete that follow. So we can do follow.where following is self, follower is the follower, and we can call it destroy. So we can actually change that to find by, and there's no need to do check if it exists, because if it doesn't, we're going to call destroy on a nil object. So we can fix that in a second. We'll go back to the follow spec, rerun this, it should now pass, and it does. And then if we just copy this across to the next example too, only we're not going to create the follow. So this person doesn't follow, and it shouldn't change follow count. So we'll rerun this, and now it should fail because the follow doesn't exist. We're calling destroy on nil class, and we can just fix that by going to the user and putting a pretzel in here. So we're only going to call destroy if it loads. If it doesn't find anyone, there's no one to unfollow. So we can run all these tests now, and all 4 of them should pass. And that basically gives us our full controllers for follow and unfollow. The last part of this then is actually wiring up the UI. So we want to go to a profile and have a follow and unfollow button, and be able to click that to follow or unfollow. So we're going to do that with a component. We're going to say bin rails generate component, and we're just going to call it follow. So if we load up that component spec and load up the component itself, we're going to need to know in the follow component, first off, who is the profile, and second, who's the user, current user trying to perform the follow. So we're going to need to take an option here for the profile. So if we go into our like component, we'll just copy this initialization code, but instead of a tweet, we're going to have a profile, and that's the profile who is going to be followed or not. So we can go to our profile show view, and down where we have this code, where we have if the profile is the current user, we have an edit button. We're going to add another section here where if user signed in and profile is not the current user, then we're going to render our component. So we're going to go in here and say render follow component dot new, and we're going to pass in profile as @profile, and we're just going to copy that link and move the follow component inside this flex, shrink, and margin code. Just if we want to reuse it elsewhere, we probably don't want these page specific classes. So we'll go to the follow component, and instead of link to, we'll have a button to, and we'll start out by just saying follow, and then it is profile follows path, I think. Let's just check that. So say Rails roots grep for follow, profile follows path, that's right. And we have a profile username. So profile username is then @profile.username or profile.username. We don't need the turbo frame. we do want the button classes, and we also just want to put in a method here of post. And so we'll save this and reload. And we get undefined method button classes. I think we need to add helpers in front of that. And we do. So now we have our follow button. And if we go back to our follow controller, I just want to put in a flash notice here. So I want to just say notice followed and then the @profile.username. And then the same on the delete, we'll just want to say unfollowed. So if we reload this, click follow, we get followed reacher. Now the button still says follow. If we click it, it's going to still work and not create additional follows, but we want to make sure that this now changes to an unfollow button. So we can go to the follow component and we can create a method for following. And in this then we can check and say @profile. Actually, let's do this on the user itself. So if we say followed by follower, and then we can run this code, and then we can also just put this in here hopefully, so that will reuse that followed code. So let's just go to our follow request spec, rerun this and make sure that refactor worked, and it did. And then we can go to our follow component and we can say followed by follower current.user, hit save, and then we can reload. We need to make use of this, so following component, what we want to do is if following so if you're not following, we want a button to follow. If you're already following, we want a button to unfollow, and it's the same URL. The method just changes to delete, and I think we have a button style maybe for danger. Let's see. Let's check our button styles helper. Variants for buttons, we have primary and secondary. So let's leave unfollow as secondary and leave follow as primary. So unfollow is kind of grayed out a little bit. We can click unfollow. We've just unfollowed reacher. Follow is then a much more primary action, which I think is better. So we can click follow. So that is how we do the database structure and endpoints for following and unfollowing users. And in the next episode, we'll take a look at how to customize the feed based on that.